Joining me now, Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack. Deputy Prime Minister, thanks for joining us. The Prime Minister was very, very strong this morning on the fact that the Prime Minister was very strong this morning on the fact that these people should not be out and about over the next 48 hours protesting. You've taken a similar line. Do you think they should be charged?
Well, they should if they're breaking state laws. And for some of those protesters to be holding up signs, a good cop is a dead cop, I mean, this, Peter, is reprehensible. I mean, the police are the ones who run to an emergency when everybody else, most of these protesters no doubt included, are running the other way. I mean, our police are there to protect us. They don't need to be out there trying to protect society against these sorts of actions. And the state premiers have made it quite clear, the Prime Minister has made it quite clear, these protests are unlawful, and if these people are breaking state laws, then they should have actions taken against them. Simple as that.
And of course, the risk to the community, and this is why Australians, I think, are so angry. And I actually think that, you know, in Queensland, we saw it was probably a 50-50 split on keeping the borders closed up until last weekend, when really they were having a lend of us, and that's when I think the tide turned here in Queensland. What about this border stuff, Michael? I mean, you know, the Premier here is under enormous pressure to change her tack. People are really hurting, particularly in the tourism industry.
Oh, they are. And look, I spoke to Warren Inch today. He came to see me about tourism, particularly in Cairns and in and around his vast electorate in North Queensland. They want tourism to resume. And, you know, it is holding them back. So the moment Professor Brendan Murphy, the Chief Medical Officer, says that border restrictions should be lifted, then it should be open slather. And let's get out into those communities. Take your esky, as Eleanor said, fill it up with regional produce. Let's try and get back to life as normal, but still exercising those important social distancing rules. Still following the strict but very, very sensible and practical medical advice put forward by the Australian Health Protection Principal Committee, Professor Brendan Murphy and his colleagues, and let's look after each other. That's the main message that we need to get through. Yes, we need our aviation sector back, and the only way it's going to get back is by lifting those state border restrictions. And the state premiers can do it, of course. Once they get the medical advice that it's okay to do it, there should be no excuse. Lift the borders, but don't until it's wise and sensible to do so, and until the medical officers say that it's appropriate. Don't get in mass gatherings. It's against the law. It's for a cause that, yes, while some might consider it right and proper, it's placing people's lives at risk. And to turn on the police who protect our community, those proud men and women in blue who've been doing it for so long, they too deserve the respect that they should be given.
Michael, the state-owned Global Times newspaper in China says that Australia is subjected to chronic racism when it comes to Chinese students. Do you believe that?
No, absolutely not. And of course, we're lucky we've got a free press here. We're lucky we've got people who can express their views and express their opinions, and they're able to do that in a democratic society. But there's no racism to that extent here in Australia. I mean, we are a very welcoming nation, a very multicultural nation. I come from Wagga Wagga. They fly more than 100 flags on Australia Day every year to share and celebrate and embrace multiculturalism. Griffith, which is, of course, that wonderful, wonderful irrigation city, community, they too fly more than 100 flags, and they've been the cradle of multiculturalism, and so many communities are like those two-country communities I just mentioned, who embrace our Chinese visitors. We've got Charles Sturt University in my hometown, so many Chinese students, and they're welcome all the time, every time.
Just before we go, do you think the Commonwealth Government will appeal the live export federal court decision?
Well, the full judgment and the full decision isn't going to be handed down until the 29th of this month. and then there's 28 days to consider that. We'll take a careful and considered approach, as we've always done. That 2011 decision to stop the live trade hurt a lot of people, and we recognise that. I was one of the most outspoken critics against the decision, and I fully understand those cattle producers, those exporters. They had a right to be able to do what they were doing. They had that taken away from them. I fully understand their concern, but at the same time also understand that the government will take a very careful and considered view on this and what we do going forward.
Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack, always great to see you on Sky News Across Australia.
Always a pleasure, Gleeson. Thanks, mate.
Authorised by Michael McCormack, the National Party, Wagga Wagga.